let's call it to order at, call it 7:59.
6:59?
6:59. I keep doing that. Thank you. The first, since we've got Deborah here tonight, let's just do some quick introductions, and for the camera. We'll start with Drew, who loves to start.
Drew Hazelton, Jamaica.
Carolyn Partridge, Wyndham.
Patty Dixon, Jamaica.
Pam Tweedy, Jamaica.
John Everett, consultant.
Joe Winrick from Townsend.
Erin
Sure.
Sargo. Brookline.
Sherry Green, Brookline.
Heidi Ross, Townsend.
Chris Jers, Townsend.
Bud Sanderson, Townsend.
Peter Barris, recorder.
You guys want to introduce yourselves too?
Deborah Leggott, principal of the Townsend School.
Anita Rafael. PR.
PR consultant.
I had to think about that in a minute.
Jerry Dyke, Wyndham.
Nancy Dyke, Wyndham.
Thank you. Okay, so the first order of business is to review and revise the agenda. I don't know if anybody has any revisions. Anita has actually requested to jump as far up the agenda as she possibly can because she has another commitment. Something about a gill feather turnip festival and massive PR for the weekend.
I can't wait.
So if we can jump Article 8, discussing the connection with the citizens documents and our flyer and some of that kind of stuff with, ahead. I don't think it's going to be a hugely lengthy discussion, so we can, get that done and let her get out of here.
Is it
Sure.
okay if I sit here?
Unless somebody argues.
Well, I have 600 pounds of turnips waiting for us tonight that have to all be peeled to make soup tomorrow for the Gill Feather Turnip Fest on Saturday. So I escaped from turnip peeling to appear. First of all, I have some thank yous. I want to thank Patty for helping me collate and coordinate all this stuff. She's been invaluable. I want to thank John Everett for constantly reviewing, fact-checking, updating stuff we're doing, and Joe for getting back to me all the time super quick so that we can get this stuff out. This doesn't work unless I have that kind of support and participation, so I'm really happy about that. Patty has everything that I have done. She's preparing a portfolio of that, and what I think Patty and I will do at some point in the next time is package it all up and email it to you. We really didn't want to print out lots of paper for y'all to just look at for 5 seconds. So you'll have it. It'll be an email. You can browse through the parts of it you want, and that will include things like the poster, the school take-home notice, the press release, public service announcements, posts that have gone on front porch,
Flyer.
this flyer thing that we're working on,
Brochure.
and so there'll be a little pile of stuff. Now regarding bios, I have this lovely bio here with a picture, which was very nice. I really only need 3 or 4 lines from everybody, just like I live in Jamaica, I like horseback riding, I grow gill feather turnips, I'm on the committee, I'm on the school board, and I serve on the cemetery commission or something. So 3 or 4 lines from everybody, because I really don't want to post one unless I can post all of them. And so that would be good. We can get that information on there. So I'd like to just go right to the brochure and get feedback and comments so that I can finalize this, and then we can get it ready for the voting day meeting.
Do we have that?
Well, no, we're kind of, this was just a makeup thing I did, so we didn't send it to everybody because we still don't know what we want in it. So I just kind of made one up, and Joe has seen it, Patty's seen it, John has seen it, and so I don't know how you want to review this, Patty, gentlemen, do you have a thought?
Well, I'm sending it around, but
Yeah.
I
Kinda
don't,
harder
nobody,
to-
not
Well,
everybody
here's the
will
front
be
and
able
here's
to.
the back.
Well, we can certainly distribute this amongst the committee by email. I mean, it's an
Sure.
electronic document. People can comment, we can make revisions, and you can get something together.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
we kind of need to make some decisions on this stuff, but I think reviewing those documents and commenting on them, and then, authorizing Patty as the sort of contact person for PR to approve, to give
Yeah.
you final approval is
Yeah,
fine with
I
me.
just thought John might have some thoughts on, was it that column that you wanted replaced, John? That stuff that I took out of the report?
Must have been someone else.
Oh, okay, I thought maybe you had thoughts on that far right-hand column.
Well, Joe
This
and
one?
I had talked a little
No, I
bit
wasn't.
Okay,
about trying to include somewhere after our last Leland and Gray School Board meeting. People had issues because we weren't including cons to any of this in any of our materials. We weren't telling the not so great things that could happen, which, I don't know. So that I had emailed Joe to see if that would be an appropriate place to try and put something about.
This doesn't really have a whole lot of, this is really just what are we
It's
doing?
just information, yeah.
Information.
straight
I mean, the only
information.
thing that
Yeah.
even could be considered pros in this are the two things under incentives. And there's certainly, a lot more information in the blog spot that you really have to go to. I mean, you can't make a decision based on this pamphlet.
Yeah.
If you are,
No.
you're really
I
not
don't
doing
think
your
any
job.
of the information
This
that
just
you've done
sends you
is
to a place to find
information,
more.
it's not pro, it's not con.
right, and the reason I thought to include the incentives, not so much because they're pro or con, but because it's a fact.
Yeah.
I saw that as a factual statement, that yes, there is an incentive. I didn't weigh that as to pro and con, simply as a
Yeah,
statement
those are
of fact.
statutory incentives. True enough.
So Joe,
Yes.
I really agree with you. I think this should be sent out electronically, and maybe we can get back to Anita or Patty within a certain period of time.
Yeah.
It would be
You snooze, you
me.
lose.
Yeah, exactly. I
You
would say,
know?
we
Yep.
can send it out electronically, give people a week or so to comment on
I
it.
can
And
send it
after a
tomorrow.
week, if you haven't if you haven't made your opinion known to Patty,
Yeah.
too late.
And the other thing to talk about is how you want to get these printed. So I will tell you that the other committee, which is a smaller number of people in towns, decided that one person from each town would just be responsible for contacting their town clerk and identifying the greatest possible number of voters that there may be. So for an example, in Wardsboro, we have 800 residents. We have 300-ish registered voters, but only about 75 people ever vote. So we'll probably print 100 copies and call it a day. I don't think we'll do more than that. So that's a decision that needs to be made as to how you want these gotten to the voting places, to the polling places.
Okay, well
And
that,
we have time on that.
I mean, that also makes sense to me. Contact the town clerk and ask them how many people are gonna show up. What's our best voter turnout over the last 5 or 10 elections, and print that many.
So is each person from a town gonna do that, or am I supposed to call all
Oh,
them?
I'd take Townsend. I mean, I'm in the
Okay.
town clerk's
I'll-
office.
I'll-
I'll
take
do
Brookline.
Jamaica. Oh, yeah, you're. Hey, Pam,
So do we have a new
we actually had
volunteer?
we had 220.
we don't have any.
Okay, we got a new
show up
Ah, we do right there.
Oh, we do.
And then we got New Fan, Jamaica, Brookline, Townsend, Wyndham.
So this coming election on November 8th will be a real, and I would wait until the November 8th one.
Yeah,
Because
that's the
it's
one
gonna
we're
be,
doing.
Yeah.
I expect a
Large.
significant voter turnout for
Right.
Wyndham.
And
So what is that, like 100?
No.
150?
No, it's more, probably 200 plus.
You're gonna beat Townsend with that turnout.
We had almost 300 show up for our school choice thing, so
Yeah.
that was 30%. That was pretty darn good.
right, so you have to figure out if your
Alright.
town clerks are going to be willing to run these off, or your schools, or how you want to do it. But we are going to print a few extras for our other committee, just leave them behind with the town clerks in case after the fact it'll exist. But it'll also be posted on the blog. The entire brochure will be a downloadable PDF once we finalize it. So if somebody doesn't get a copy and you hear about it, you can just say, oh, it's on the blog, just here's the link. And they can print out this exact thing on their own.
And do I understand correctly then that we will get emails of the brochure, we can look at it, we
Yep.
have a
Yep.
quick turnaround time?
Yep,
And that the brochure will be printed and made available to the town clerks after we find out how many we need, or are we don't do the printing?
No.
Okay.
well, we're asking, and on the other committee, we're just asking our town clerks if they'll run them off for us, because we don't need many for our towns. So you all have to figure out, do you want to incur the expense of outside printing, or do you want to break it up and have the town clerks just bear the
We
expense.
can ask the town clerks if they'll do it. If they won't, I can't
I
imagine it's
have
much to run off.
information about printing prices at, somewhere in here, at Staples.
Yeah, to just photocopy, you know,
Right,
Get thousands
500
of them.
copies
But
at
they have to
Staples
be
probably.
folded in the whole bit.
right.
The schools themselves would probably
You can get
participate in the thing.
3,000 copies for $240, 2,000 for 180, and
Okay.
1,000 for 100.
So
and
it's a
that's
fairly
black and white on
negligible expense to get
32-pound
them
paper.
printed.
And isn't there money in this for communication? Yes.
Yeah,
So-
we have money to actually pay for
All
the
right, so
printing.
you can vote on that expense when we finalize the document.
Because I'm thinking it'd be nice to have these to leave at our post offices too for after the voting and,
I think we should
yeah,
get them
just
printed.
spread them around.
I think we should get them printed and they would probably even fold them for us.
Yep.
Mhm.
Because I've used Staples before for horse show things and they do a great job.
All right, we can check on that.
Yeah.
Okay,
The next meeting's the 1st, the election's the 8th, so.
It needs to be done before the next meeting.
That's what I'm.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
that's why,
Right,
Yeah,
you know, a week of commentary and then Patty takes it and runs with it and it's done.
and then I'll finalize it.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
gonna
Okay,
do
no.
it through Staples. Once we get the numbers, I'm gonna.
We'll get the numbers and see, yeah, but I'd say go through Staples.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to have enough that we can leave them around towns too for after the voting.
Well,
and
if you have
they
the
miss it.
brochures available, and the next meeting is November 2nd, right?
Yeah.
I think November 2nd, so if the brochures are available, we can collect them then based on the number of voters and take them back to our town clerks.
That'd be great.
Okay, I'll make a note that it all has to be done by then. Joe, you and I still have unfinished business on the press release or not? Where do we stand?
Other than my quote,
Yes.
I started thinking about it this afternoon. I'll email it to you right
All
away.
right, and then Patty's seen this, John has seen this, so we're just waiting on you. And when I get your final approval, this will go out
Okay,
to just the papers that local people read.
Okay.
And Patty, I just have one more item, which is unfinished business. You were gonna let me know the results of how your towns get their information. Remember we discussed that?
Still working on that.
Oh, all right, because if there's some obvious thing I need to know. Stuff's been going on Front Porch, but I can only post for Jamaica. I can't post for the other towns.
Oh,
So if I send, you can post for Wyndham. And what is the Wyndham Front Porch?
I don't think we have a front porch, but we do have a Wyndham News and Notes. And I wanted to ask you, Anita, what the actual website is. I just wrote an article for the upcoming News and Notes. And I put in some website, or, you know, it was the Act 46, and it's where minutes are posted, and I don't know if John's overseeing that or you are. But what's the actual?
It's right there.
blog.
So the blog site
Okay.
is wcsu-lgtowns.blogspot.com.
Okay.
And that's posted on everything we send out.
And so do I forward stuff to you to go on your news and notes?
It only comes out every 2 weeks, but I want people to have this site so that they can check it out if
Okay.
they're so inclined.
Yeah, if you come across anything else you want, if you have a list and you do a listserv, you guys have all kinds of ways you communicate, and we could
I
use
can
that.
also get it out through the WCO list, but that's not comprehensive, but it's pretty good.
Yeah,
All right,
Okay.
so you and I will talk about that.
yep.
But everything you
Great.
post or move or forward goes on the blog?
I don't, yeah, everything that we do in a meeting, I've been told this needs to go on the blog, I let Anita
She
know,
sends it to me.
and blah, 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 and she posts all the agendas on the blog, plus they go out in a public service, I have a whole list of stuff, so I won't,
Yep.
Okay.
yeah.
So
But I don't
it's
actually
been, things
put
have been
stuff on
going
the
pretty
blog, I'm
good
just her
between me and
contact.
Patty. I'm not, I think it's great.
Yep, I've been able to find us.
All right,
Saw us in the paper, posted it on Front Porch Forum.
all right.
We're out there.
So I have a
We're
list
getting
of the stuff that you've done that I can read after you're gone.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh,
If we're
okay.
doing PR, we
Well,
should
this
finish.
is from John. Discuss study committee progress at regular town and district board meetings. Provided multiple notices of each committee meeting. Encouraged participation by members of the public attending study committee meetings. Sent information to families through the school children. Posted meeting agendas and minutes on the WCSU Act 46 website. videotape meetings and posted the videos on Brattleboro TV and YouTube. Established a blog containing easily accessible materials and resources to understand the work of the committee and the way to provide input and ask questions. Distributed press releases from the work of the committee, developed and used an email list to send information to citizens, developed an informational flyer, distributed the flyer through the schools at national lecture, that's coming up.
This is really all the stuff that's gonna go into the articles that talks about all the efforts that we made to contact
Right.
our
Yeah.
public.
Yeah,
You know,
but I
this is
thought
stuff that
everybody might
Anita's
like to know
done.
what's been going on.
It'll be in the articles.
Yeah, so all this is still ongoing and will
Yep.
continue to roll
And
forward.
public service announcements and front porch
Front porch.
forum.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Thanks. I'm back to peeling gill feather turnips.
Any questions before we let her run away?
Come to the Gill Feather Turnip Fest Saturday, the 22nd.
All right, thank you,
Thank
Anita.
you.
Close, 'cause it's gonna be cold.
All right, well, we can play shuffle the agenda just a little bit more. I don't want to make Deborah wait all night, unless somebody has a problem with that. We could move Deborah up a little bit for the presentation.
Let's do it.
All right, Deborah, the floor is yours.
I appreciate that, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I appreciate you hanging out while we dealt with the PR thing quickly.
That's all right. Good evening, wonderful Act 46 committee. I'm Deborah Leggott, principal of the Townshend School, and I have a little handout, and John was good enough to put it up, so I have been told to go very quickly, so I will do that.
Who said such?
He said that.
Did not. I
I will do that because I know you're very busy. Is this a good place for me? So, all about Townsend, the Townsend School. Many of you probably don't know that the Townsend Schoolhouse, the little house you see from the Common, is the oldest continuously functioning schoolhouse in Vermont. Some people claim it, but it's really true for us. About 1860, had a lot of additions, but it's a wonderful old building. In 1989, a large addition went on the back. A very creative addition, straight back, so some people are amazed at how big the school is. And so it was an addition to the full-room schoolhouse, and it created space for 130 children. The present population is 71. I've been principal of this school since 1996, and the population has declined from 98 to 71 in the 20 years that I've been there. During the past 10 years, the Townsend School Board has made significant investments in the fiscal plant I wanted to mention to you. We have a new standing seam roof, which is a 50-year roof, 2 new boilers. We've retrofitted all of our lights, new carpeting throughout, UV disinfection system, and just last week, our submersible pump went in our 300-foot well, so we now have a new pump that should be good for another 25 years. The next page is the vision of the Townsend School, and I would say, you certainly can read all of that, but all means all. We are, of course, committed as a staff to making sure that each student that goes through the Townsend School receives everything they need. We celebrate individuality, creativity, and the concept of excellence. Each student, we hope, will experience the fulfillment of mastery in reading, writing, and math, and their educational experiences will make them believe in themselves as learners. We really champion the self-concept of every child. We believe that that's at least 70–80% of all learning and success in school. So we educate the whole child philosophically. Each member of the Townsend school community deserves a safe and supportive environment, free of bullying and harassment, another commitment that we make to every person that walks through the door. And so, as I said before, how we feel about ourselves is how we will best function. It's a high priority at TES. So I went on the blog or the citydata.com, and got the following demographics for Townsend. We kind of measure up with the averages in Vermont with our population, and our males and females about the same. The median age, 47.8 years, and household is just $2,000 less than the median household income in Vermont. Median household value of a condo or a house is $223,000. And our free and reduced meal percentage right now is about 58%. We have a current population of 71 children. We have a pre-K of 11 4-year-olds, 6 kindergartners, so they're separated this year. We have a 1-2 with 21 children, a 3-4 with 16, a 5-6 with 16. So 5 full-time classroom teachers. All teachers in the Townsend School are highly qualified, very highly qualified, because they've been teaching many years, at least plus 20, and they actively seek professional development, lots of master's degrees, etc. So very qualified. We're excellent staff. We, in addition to our classroom teachers, we have a pre-K program, para, a Title I teacher, literacy coach for primary grades, one-on-one paras for all students with special needs who need one-on-ones, special ed program para, special ed teacher. 10% of our children have IEPs. That's a little bit less than the national average, which I think is 12%. Special teachers for PE, art, music, guidance, library, nurse. So we have all the services that all the schools have. We also have, in addition to that, a teacher who is nearly certified in Spanish. So we have language instruction in our pre-K through 2. We'd like to expand that throughout the school. We, like all of us, have not been able to afford a language teacher, but English is the best language we can offer right now, and Spanish is right in line to be offered full-time if we can. We provide a report card twice a year, January and June. Parents receive a standards-based report card, which means student progress in achieving the Common Core State standards is represented on the report card. Parent conferences are held in the fall and spring for goal setting and progress monitoring. All of our test results are above state and district averages in all areas. We have school-wide Title I, which provides remedial supports in the classroom in reading and math. Teachers use the Common Core State Standards, Next Generation Science Standards, Vermont's Early Learning Standards, and Framework of Standards to inform instruction. Teachers use a wide variety of materials to implement the Common Core State Standards. We do not subscribe to a particular program. We teach to the standards with all of the resources that we can. We have, teachers use formative and summative data to plan instruction and interventions for students. School-wide behavior management uses several things, not just PBIS, which you probably learned is the Positive Behavioral Intervention System, but we use, all of our teachers are also trained in the responsive classroom. We have, I think, unique to the Townsend School, what we call guided recess. Guided recess is recess that is actually, the whole school is divided into groups and it's taught so that minimizes, games are taught, minimizes bullying, harassment, accidents, and many other things. We've done it for very many years and find it to be really valuable. It's part of the responsive classroom program. Morning meeting, you probably heard of that. That's another responsive classroom idea that is present in our school. And PBIS, and we've adopted our own in that we believe that positively supporting and encouraging students and helps them to be responsible for their own behavior, which is really the goal of all behavior programs. Students have one-to-one computer use, laptops and Chromebooks. Each classroom has a smart board, projector, document camera, which is called an ELMO for tech support during instruction. So we are well equipped with technology. Other supports for learning. Can't learn if you're hungry. And we feed them all day long. Sometimes I think we feed them more than anything else. But they get a really big, nutritious breakfast, healthy snacks that comes with a special grant. Exotic fruits, vegetables, things normally not available to every child, so that they can learn about healthy eating. Lunch and a quote dinner. I say dinner because it's a really kind of glorified lunch, but it has all the food groups, and it's great for children who are really hungry about 3 o'clock so they can get through the after-school program. So they're well fed. Our very active school club meets once a month and raises around $7,000 a year for enrichment activities, artists in residence programs. That's a very strong presence in the Townshend School. Although our budgets have been shrinking every year, we still try to maintain that. This is our 4th year of having a circus residency for 1 week, which is an expensive and 100% participation, very, very positive program. So we're continuing with that this year. Welcome Wednesday. Each Wednesday, even though our school is locked, like all other schools, we open the door on Wednesday morning from 7:45 to 8:15. Parents are invited to walk their children to class and then to come back and have coffee and snacks with me and to network with each other. So they have that chance every Wednesday. Winter sports, subsidized and organized by school club. 8-week program provides alpine skiing, snowboarding, instruction at Stratton, cross-country skiing, and snowshoeing at Grafton Ponds, and swimming at Mount Snow on 8 Wednesday afternoons, January, February, and March. Teachers in the Townshend School participate and instruct. I'm very proud of that. Field trips. One of the hallmarks of our school, because we really believe that learning outside of the classroom, which is both encouraged and supported by our school club and by me. Our 6th grade trips, you've probably heard about them. They raise their own money, thousands and thousands of dollars every year. And they have taken week-long trips for many years to such places as Washington, Philadelphia, Colonial Williamsburg, Alabama Space Camp, Key West, Florida, the Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls, and it's wonderful. This year we're going to Williamsburg and Philadelphia and Washington. Our 5th grade students attend Camp Key Waden, which is a week-long environmental science camp in Salisbury, Vermont. Other grades seek museums and learning venues to complement their curriculum. We believe in community service, and we're very lucky with our location because we have access to Leland and Gray, to the Townshend Food Shelf, and to Valley Cares. So, for example, the commodities truck, and the truck comes in once a week for the Townshend Food Shelf, which I think services about 40 or 50 families. Our 6th grade students unload the truck, and they stock the shelves every week. Students visit residents at Valley Cares, and they read to them, and this year we're taking or going on a parade on Halloween to trick-or-treat at Valley Cares, the whole school, so that should be a lot of fun. We are really lucky about also being in proximity to Leland and Gray. Our Leland and Gray students come to the Townshend School, many of them in the kind of program that offers them the opportunity to see whether or not they are interested in education, to get that extra boost that they need helping younger children. It's a great collaborative program. We also take advantage of letting our students in the 6th grade come over and visit classes at Leland and Gray. And for 6th grade team building in the fall, we use their ropes course for a week. And we have a 6th grade teacher right here. Would you like to comment and expand on any of that?
Only if there's questions.
Okay.
I'm happy to expand.
The final thing I want to say is that if you were at the Pumpkin Festival this past weekend, it pretty much says it all in terms of community support. We have a booth. It's one of our big fundraisers for our trip at the end of the year for the 5th and 6th grade. We raised $6,000 approximately. Parents from classes 10 years ago, 15 years ago, came to support that, worked behind the booth selling. We had about 30 or 40 crock pots. This is just one example of of community support that we have for our school. Without that level of support, we wouldn't be the school we are. So, any questions? I went as fast as I could. Well, I know you're busy.
It's another great, wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah.
Good job.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
thanks. I'll take some of these unless you want them.
I'll take one for
Oh, an
Ken.
extra?
For Ken.
Okay, great. I can leave them. How about if I leave them?
Yeah, we'll give them to the people that weren't here.
All right,
We'll
thanks.
distribute them.
Have a good night, thank you.
Thanks.
Great.
All right. I don't even know where we, okay.
We're on number
so
3.
Number 3 is public comment. Do you have any comments, public?
Yes. Yes, I do have a comment tonight, Joe.
I wanted to interrupt you. We pulled our committee and put our thoughts together, and Nancy has been appointed the spokesman and will be reporting.
Okay. First of all, I just want to say, as a taxpayer in the larger area, thank you to all of you who are willing to come and spend your time and serve on this committee and work through everything that you need to do. It is appreciated. The other thing I would like to say that I've appreciated listening to all of the principals tell us about what's going on in the schools, as Deborah did tonight. I think I learned quite a bit from these presentations. Having said that, there is one thing I would like to refer to. I have heard just a few remarks here during the meetings along the lines of, do we really want to do this, and why do we want to do this? And I just wanted to comment on that from my perspective. And that is, if we are serious about local control, it would seem to me that we might want to do whatever we can to determine our own future rather than to let things happen to us. So I think that's a strong, strong reason for being involved in this, and I'm sure many of you feel that way too. A criticism or a detraction from the consolidation of governance that I've heard is that the local school boards in each one of the towns know their children best. And they may know their children very well and have been trying to make good decisions for them. I can see that, but I think it might help us to remember what the duties of school boards are, and primarily it is to set policy for the district, not to make educational decisions for individual kids. That still remains at the building between parents and teachers and principals, so that can still be a very individual thing. So I think that this can be a positive thing moving forward, helping us maybe to learn to be concerned with and care for the kids in the wider community beyond our small community. I think it can help with that and hopefully develop opportunities for all kids, more opportunities. In my own opinion, I think this can work, and I think it can work well. We're not charting new territory here. We're not blazing new paths. There are all kinds of school districts across this country who are doing this very thing. And I think it can work and work well if we want it to work well. So again, I want to end where I began, and that is thanking you for all your efforts here.
Now I know why you come to all these meetings.
Thank
you again.
Carefully.
Yeah, you've been paying attention too, haven't you? Anyone else, member of the public? Gary?
I said my piece.
I just didn't want you to be. All right, so moving right along, we need to approve the minutes from the last meeting. The one correction I have is it lists me as being present and I wasn't.
And it lists Ann Reynolds as Jamaica, and she's not on the committee. I am.
I think we got revised ones
Oh,
that
you
were
did?
fixed.
Were you not? But you were here. And it says just
The other thing, Joe, is
Oh, yeah, I
neither
was
Aaron
here.
or I were present. We were both ill,
And Emily wasn't here either.
and Emily wasn't, yeah.
Okay, so that must be just cookie cutter, huh?
Yeah, I think that
think
was
it was-
revised and
yeah.
sent out again.
Okay,
It was, but
And
then
I'm
still
still-
Patty.
Are you a member
I have
of the
another.
committee, or are you?
I am, but I'm an alternate, so I'm not a voting
Okay.
member until Carolyn is not here. I'll be right back.
Yes, you should be on this list. Yep, I should be on the list, because I was here. And Antia, so should I let, Anita know Antia's name too, since she's an alternate?
There's no sort of official alternate, that's just what the
Okay.
board, that board did.
That board did,
Yeah.
okay. So-
all right, do you have the revised minutes, Peter?
I probably do.
I
Why don't we push
apologize.
this?
Let's go back to the
Pam has
minutes.
them here.
I have them here if you'd like.
I printed them.
Do they have the correct
Well,
attendance?
They missed me.
They missed Patty, but it just is true for Jamaica, and I don't know if everyone else is right.
And I was here
Do you want to
last
see
week.
them?
Can we approve the revised ones? I mean, if the attendees are right on there, we can add Patty?
But, yeah,
And it took Aaron and me off, and you?
Yeah, I did.
Yes.
And Emily wasn't here either,
And
right?
Emily.
Sherry?
Apparently, she's not on the revised either.
Sherry Green?
So
Sherry was not here.
I was
Right.
here.
Yeah, so that's not
the
right.
committee members that were listed on the previous ones, Townsend was myself, Heidi and Chris. Jamaica was Drew. Newfane was Ken, Kelly, and Ian. Brookline was Sherry.
No.
No.
Okay, so they're still not right. Let's push this to the end so we can get through. We have a huge agenda, and rather than correcting minutes, we can even move it to the next one. We'll do double duty. Okay, so next on the agenda would be developing the elements to include in the report section about student opportunities. So I guess that would be, what page in here? It starts on page 3. What do you need, Al?
Agenda?
Want to run a copy?
Which attachment is this? Is this the LG Town's impact on student learning?
It's the actual article, the
It would-
report.
Okay, it's the report.
Yeah, it would be starting
Okay.
on page 3 and running through page,
19?
no,
Oh, it's really,
6. And then at the end of page 6, it talks about, of particular interest to the committee was the input from the principals, which then you go to John's memo, the impact on student learning, dated October 10th. And that talks about some of the things that the principals put together.
so maybe it would help if I read what I've written since then.
Okay,
So I'm particularly interested in the committee with the input from principals and the central office staff about the impact of unification on student learning opportunities.
where is
So
that
the
one?
gray is what I've added. The consultant interviewed the principals in a group and other administrators individually. The findings of the consultant are included in attachment A, student learning opportunities. So that's a piece that you have that will be included in the report. And then the real meat for your discussion is the next paragraph. The committee considered the consultant's report on administrative interviews, input from community members, and their own experiences as citizens involved in the schools, as board members, parents, and volunteers. They took special note of the following. And so what you need to do is to figure out what's important to you as a committee about the impact of governance for student learning. And what I'll do is listen to what you say, write it down, and add it into the report.
a number of these things are actually outlined in this memo that talks about, there's numbers 1 through 6, and then 6 has a number of subpoints A through G. Actually, A through H and a 7. I think most of those are are probably worthy of inclusion, but there may be even more that people have noticed.
Joe, I think that there are people who may not know where you are. I know Drew doesn't know where we are.
Trying to find.
This is a document with 4 pages. And it was, for me, it was the
Got
third
the
attachment.
wrong
On the October 10th
The
document?
October 10th memo.
So that's my memo to you, about what I learned.
This is what got sent out with your thing a few days ago,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then pulling out from that and your other experiences and what the principals have told you and what community people have told you, you need to start drafting what would go into the report that you believe about the impact on students.
You know, some of this goes back to the document that the sort of exploratory committee came up talking about the different things that are valuable about each school, the different climates in each school. But really what we end up doing here is coming up with sort of a list of, these are things that will impact positively student learning, or at least ways that we think we have a chance to impact positively student learning, moving forward with the consolidation.
Drew, are we looking for opinions, or at some point are we actually going to talk about factual impacts on student learning? I mean, we can all sit around and have an opinion as to what I think might happen, but we haven't actually had a discussion yet about what that impact is going to be. I mean,
Well, we've had opinions from principals, consultants, townspeople. I mean,
at
go
what
ahead.
point do we get to facts other than opinions?
How can we, without consolidating and actually doing it, have a hard, cold fact? I mean, once again,
Data.
nobody.
I mean, as we said, we're not recreating anything. This has been done. These consolidations have happened. So can we see evidence of where this has happened that shows us data to go from?
Bob Tebow came from a single district school before he was principal here, and I know in his presentation he talked about some of the ways that being in a single district system made things easier. It made the curriculum streamlining. Even though everything's aligned now through WCSU, the fact that they were in a single district actually gave them some extra opportunities. That's one I can point to, but we haven't really made a study of all the consolidations in the state to see how they're doing, because I don't think just because there was a factual improvement in Burlington that if we do the same thing down here, it's going to improve the same way. We have 5 very different schools and different communities and different values and everything. I think we have to look at it and make the best decision we can about, we think, given what we have to work with, that these things will happen. I don't think we're going to get to, this will happen.
We in Brookline and Newfane have already consolidated our school. We have Newbrook.
So, and it's been a boon to you.
It
The
has
kids
been
get better education,
wonderful.
there's
We
great
have-
tax savings.
Yep.
You consolidated your schools, and that's not what we're talking about.
We
We're talking
cons-
about consolidating governance.
But they're consolidated their governance too.
Right, but they consolidated their school. If you had just consolidated governance, you would not have achieved the same improvements in student education as you did by consolidating your schools.
Well, we've
And we're not talking about that.
But we've consolidated we have a joint school board too, of Newfane and Brookline residents. And so we have a Brookline board and we have a Newfane board, and then we have a joint board. So, we discuss the hiring of teachers, we discuss the lunch program for our students, our collective students, and we look at expenses and the impact on Newfane and the impact on Brookline. We do that on an ongoing basis at our monthly meetings.
But you picked up your students and moved them all from Brookline to Newfane. That's a change. You changed the way your students were being educated. What we're talking about in these articles is not changing the way we're educating our students. We're talking about keeping all the students in the schools for which they come from, what towns they come from. So we're gonna have the same students in Jamaica, the same students in Townsend, same students in Wyndham as we have right now. We're not changing the way we educate kids, so we can't end up with the same results that you do. Unless we're willing to change something, we're not gonna get a different result. So we're asking to come up with an assumption or an opinion as to what's gonna change, or what the benefit is going to be if we change nothing but governance. We have not discussed changing anything for educational opportunities for students. All we're talking about is consolidating governance. The results you got were different because we were consolidating students. We were closing buildings and putting students together. That's very different than the discussion we've had as part of these articles.
1 second. Well, just, Patty had a question or a comment or whatever, and then Heidi, but well, for one thing, theirs was voluntary, ours is statutorily mandated, we have to at least look, so we have to at least look at it. Secondly, I think change is a great idea, but there's a lot of opinion that, there are a lot of people who don't want to change anything. So, if you're advocating for change, I'm with you, but there's a lot of people who don't want to change anything, and therefore the change is much more difficult. All we can do is consolidate governance and hope to realize some savings there, and by shifting personnel or whatever, move things around. But, just to, we sort of need, we have to go through the exercise, even if we find out that, there's not, even if we don't find it, and I think we can't lose hope that we can at least find some, benefits for our students. But go ahead, Patty.
Growing up, I came from a school district, Governor Wentworth Regional School District. We were one board, took care of all the elementary schools. I think there were 5 elementary schools, and we had a high school. We actually joined back in 1960-something, 63 I think it was, and they built the new high school. And we used to go to Brewster Academy, but then we all went to the same high school. I'd be more than happy to try and call the superintendent of that regional school district, tell them what we're doing, tell them these are our hoped for outcomes. What do you think? Because they would know. I do know, I keep track of things over there, and I know that they have a 20-year plan. And like if Effingham needs a new school building, Effingham, that's planned in budgets, it's budgeted for throughout the years. Effingham got a brand new school. The high school needed an arts theater type building that was in the 20-year plan. It is the most amazing building that I've ever seen. It's incredible. I just saw it when I went to a 50-year reunion a couple of years ago. So that I know is part of doing this type of thing where you're under one school board. It gives you the ability to make plans big time. My elementary school was a blue ribbon school a few years ago and for a few years, and I'm assuming that's a result of one board being in charge and helping, and none of the schools have closed, and they're all small schools. It's not a huge, but it's just, it's thrived, and people come there to bring their kids to those schools, but I'd be more than happy to call the superintendent, tell him what we're doing, try and get a quick little thing from the superintendent and see if our assumptions are anywhere near correct.
Okay.
Well, and I just wanted to say that, we have been talking about governance, combining, and we haven't talked about what this can mean for kids. And this is a little bit of a different scenario, but, a few years back when our principal helped be a principal at Brookline, there was a lot more collaboration between the classes, between Brookline and Townshend. And I realize we're not changing principals or combining principals, but I think there'll be some encouragement, and I would hope there would be encouragement of Brookline came to Townshend, they worked independently on similar things, came together, collaborated in the end, got to see finished results. I would assume, and I don't think this committee is going to dictate anything, obviously, when it comes to instruction or how teachers work together across these schools, but I would think that there would be more room for collaboration, more encouragement of collaboration, of fifth and sixth graders in Newbrook, with fifth and sixth graders in Wyndham, and fifth and sixth graders in Jamaica, just maybe working on projects, coming together. Have a science fair that everybody could work across the schools together. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that we have not yet talked about, but a lot of opportunity by creating one governance and all of us being under one umbrella. So I just wanted to throw that out there as, I'm not saying that's what's gonna happen, but I think it allows for that.
So we become, instead of a village raising a child, we become villages raising our children together, instead of being separated from each other.
And I can tell you what Heidi talked about as a teacher in the district, a sixth grade teacher, 5-6 this year. We meet 5-6 teachers together, and our wish, we always talk about trying to come together to do different collaborative work. We talked about doing some STEM work last year in these GLAMs, and we are given time by our superintendent and our boards, but when we're working under all these different facets, it does narrow that focus. So I think it would allow us to open that venue up for our kids. And I think with all the small schools, the biggest thing that is nice is, you know, when you have I have 8 sixth graders, it's so nice for them to be able to get to know Newbrook. Because then when they come to the larger high school, there's more familiarity and a little bit more of a comfort level coming to the new school. So I think it would allow us to do that as well.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but we're asking right now to come up with an opinion on information we haven't discussed yet. This is a discussion we need to have before we can have an opinion.
I agree with you.
We haven't talked about kids, but you're asking me for my opinion on how this is gonna affect kids. We haven't discussed that yet. The other articles are more important to me. I wanna know, what does it look like? We've had great presentations from principals. We've had presentations that have opened my eyes to the opportunities that exist in this district, which are not equal for students. Every school is unique, every school has opportunities. Under this arrangement, are we gonna guarantee equal opportunity to elementary school students across the district? Is that gonna be part of this? Because I have a very different opinion as to whether this is a positive or a negative if we're not guaranteeing equal opportunity. Is the program that's being offered in Townshend going to be offered in Jamaica? Are my kids gonna get the same education and the same opportunity? We haven't discussed any of that, but you're asking me to say, throw my opinion out there, whether I support it or not. It's not the right time. Let's talk about kids, let's talk about education, let's talk about, is this gonna be equal education? Is this going to be silos of education with a single board, and we're changing nothing but expecting a different result? That's what I wanna know.
By equal programs, do you mean then that every school would offer everything that every other school is offering?
I just heard about a wonderful trip that the sixth graders are gonna be doing, very educational trip. Is that gonna be open to my sixth grader? Because Jamaica doesn't offer that program.
But Jamaica has its own
They have their own trip.
sixth grade trip. Jamaica has its own school culture. We talked about how we value our individual school cultures.
Correct.
If we're no longer going to value our school's individuality and culture, and we want all those kids to have all the same experience, why are we spending any time worrying about preserving 5 schools? Let's put them in one, and then all the sixth graders get the same thing. New building, all the sixth grade does the same thing. You know, bring them down the hill, bring them across the whatever, and put them all in the same place. I don't think it's practical to take the Townshend sixth grade trip, which, you know, is 8 kids and they're fundraising their little fannies off to go, and then say, oh, and we'll take Jamaica kids. I mean, unless you want to show up with the, you know, per student cost, then, you know, sure. But what about what about if every kid in Jamaica wants to go on the Townshend sixth grade trip, and then the Jamaica sixth grade trip doesn't go?
What about as a parent, if I decide the educational programs and opportunities that are available to my kid in Newfane are better than they are in Jamaica? Do I have a right under this new governance system to send my kid to Newfane? We haven't discussed that.
Wait a second. Tim, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that the sixth grade trip, they fundraise for that, that's separate. But the fact that kids are learning Spanish at Townshend Elementary, but Jamaica doesn't have a foreign language program at all, that's more of it's a class, and it's something that I think all kids should be able to have access to. I think that
I
we need
agree.
to
I think it would be
discuss
wonderful
something
if
like that.
all the kids had access to language. One second, Patty.
Yeah, we just have to
But if we're sharing a
Well,
budget,
We could. We could
As
move
far as
teachers
I
around.
understand what Drew was saying, we had the same exact issue during the RED study, where on paper, student opportunity or raising student opportunity by consolidating boards sounded great, where fifth and sixth graders can move from Newfane to Townshend or from Jamaica to Wyndham. But then all of a sudden, we're looking at the logistics of that. And how easy is it to bring two fifth graders from Newfane to Wyndham or from Townshend to Jamaica or something? It looks good on paper, but by just consolidating boards, I think what we came up with during the RED study, the only way of really making a huge impact of improving student opportunities was the idea of building a new elementary school, where every child sits in the same school and has the same student opportunities. But that seems completely financially out of our reach. And the other thing, I think by consolidating just boards, you wonder if, what is the Newfane board, how important will be the Wyndham School for a board member representing Newfane or Newbrook? And how attached will I as a board member be to the Townshend issues? I still don't quite understand where the student opportunity improvements are coming from by consolidating boards, other than having less budgets to prepare, and less administrative work.
First of all, I believe that a lot of the things that we've talked about that are hoped for improvements would be things that would be happening at the superintendent level, under the board, the one board, then the superintendent is our employee. It's up to them to do the day-to-day of the running of the schools. It's not up to us, it's not up to the board, the new board, it's not up to us as the study committee to say this is what we want you to do and put those in our articles, because it's up to the people running the schools to do those things and make the best things happen that they can. And I think from the presentations we can see that all of our administrators are focused on that and making things the best they can. And hopefully they're looking at this as a new opportunity and an expanded opportunity for them. Second, as far as oh, I'm sorry.
Gotcha.
What was
Gotcha.
it? Yeah,
Gotcha.
what was it that you just, I had a thing about that, that you just said, that,
Board members relating to the schools, the other schools?
oh yeah, look at the Leland and Gray School Board. We look at the whole school. We do not just pay attention. I don't just pay attention to Jamaica kids. I don't even know probably don't know any of the Jamaica kids that are going to Leland and Gray. I care about this school deeply and all the students in it deeply. And that's what every board member cares about. We work so hard.
Third.
Difference is it's one school.
Yeah, but I'm from Jamaica, so I could care more about potentially, but it does work. It does work. It does work.
All right, Brad?
So I agree with you on the Leland Gray piece. I think the analogy there personally makes sense. I think that as a group, we get together and work on all the different schools at the same time. I also think that, I don't know how it is, that the different, part of the issue is we don't know what it's like necessarily at all the other school boards, but I know at ours, the principal shows up, so the administration, teachers will sometimes be there, superintendent is there. We talk about different things that are going on during that school. I could envision a situation where curriculum and student access and things that would be positive for the students could be discussed at the school board level, because it could be a hub where all the principals and the administration come and discuss, this is what we have, this is what we need, and there's opportunities where one school has that, the other does not, and we work together to give the same opportunity to both schools. Sometimes it could be equipment, sometimes it could be services, but that's one place where we'd recognize efficiencies, and we could also, I think there'd be some collaboration that would actually make everything better for the students. So.
I just wanted to bring up, and I know geographically this won't be similar, but Brattleboro. So Brattleboro has 3 elementary schools, and they all function in different ways, but they're all under one governance. What I have always heard from people who have sent their kids to different, Brattleboro schools is there's different reasons people like different Brattleboro schools. There's a different culture in each one of them. I mean, in a world where this would work out perfectly, I think families should have an opportunity to choose what school within a district they go to, because there are different cultures in every town, and people value different things. I mean, I've been the secretary at the Townshend School for the last 11 years, and during that time, first of all, we've had a teacher per grade. We now have a teacher for 2 grades. Some people firmly believe in a teacher per grade. Some people firmly believe in multi-level teaching. Families would probably enjoy having a choice of choosing multi-level versus a teacher per grade. I mean, you could literally have the different schools have different feels, but I still think it would be even throughout each school in terms of the value of the education, but the family would have more control over what culture that they chose for their student. And I realize we haven't put that on the table, but I'm just saying that's another opportunity that's out there. We all have wonderful schools. I mean, that's clear from what we've heard from all these principals these last few weeks. But different families have different opinions, and this could allow people to have a little more control over what their child was within.
No, we can write into the articles that there's choice. I mean, there was concern that people might choose to, empty a school because they didn't particularly like it, which would cause schools to maybe cease to exist. But there could be
hard
some
to believe
choice.
just because everybody has some really strong feelings about their school.
I think, it would be okay to do that, but,
I'm just throwing out there that Brattleboro has managed to fill 3 schools very well. I mean, and have different feelings. And recently I talked to a parent who said, "Oh, this is going on in the school my child's in. They don't do that at the other one, but then we don't do this that they do in the other school." And so, just a thought.
And there's the possibility, if you don't move kids around, for it to even out things like special ed costs and things like that, for teachers, like say we have declining enrollment in Leland and Gray, or kids don't sign up for French or something like that. That French teacher could conceivably go to the different schools. We can so they aren't losing their job, number one, and number two, we aren't giving up French totally at Leland and Gray because we can't find someone who will do it part 0.5 or 0.3 or whatever. We can offer them opportunity.
Sure.
Well, even Spanish.
Yeah.
You have Spanish in one school and not in other schools.
Yeah.
So maybe there's an opportunity there also.
Actually, Carolyn, you're next.
So I have a couple of small things, but I have thought a lot about this ever since the RED process, and what would be the difference between a board, for the high school, for instance, and a board for all these schools with different representation. And the difference is that the high school is one school and all the kids are coming to the same school. That's just my feeling about it. So of course, you are, the board members here are doing their best for the school. My concern, and by the way, if we wanted to have a language teacher, we could do that right now. We just have to pay for it, right? Just like we do the art teacher, well, in Wyndham we're doing our own art thing, but the music teacher, the phys ed teacher, we could do language right now. We just have to pay for it. So one of the things that I'm aware of as the representative, and and Antia is the alternate, and she will take over when I go back to the legislature, if I'm reelected, is the concept that as the smallest school, which has had a target on its back before, I'm concerned about representation. I'm concerned about, and I'm memorializing my fears for all of you, just so you can understand. I am concerned that as we put together our budget, that the smallest town could be shortchanged. Nancy is correct. I do not meddle in the educational parts of our school, except that I do teach art from time to time. But probably the more important thing that we do is we build a budget. And that budget reflects our values, what we, and we know probably better than any of you might know what the needs are for the school in the town of Windham. And so for me to even consider this, I need to be sure that Windham would be taken, just as I know you want to be sure that Jamaica is considered when the budget is together, and all of you, that's.
Wyndham is considered. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's important. We
But-
all think that way.
Yep, but the problem is, and I've seen it happen, that when money is tight and there's pressure to reduce taxes or whatever, things get thrown overboard. And I've witnessed this on the state level, and I would not want that to happen in terms of this process. I also feel it's important that we all can speak freely, and our opinions can be valued and taken seriously. So I would like to have some safeguards in that any kind of vote on a budget would need to be unanimous.
At the board level?
At this larger board
Board
level,
level, okay.
yeah. So I have a bunch of other thoughts, but I'm gonna leave it at that.
Having chaired the Leland and Gray board for 2 years and sat on it now for 9, I don't think we've ever had a unanimous budget vote. I think you would deadlock that.
Well,
What if the
Joe, come
legislature
on.
had to vote unanimously on everything?
Well, we're talking about a representational sort of board where we have one representative. And what if the decision was,
Actually,
well,
that's not written in
That's
stone
not-
either.
yeah.
Well-
The articles that are approved for Brattleboro have slots for the town and then at-large members. You could pack the at-large if you're,
Yeah, right.
run a campaign, pack
Right.
the at-large.
Right, yeah.
Why
Brookline-
not?
Brookline's in the same.
All you have to do is
in
be
the
the
same
person
Sorry,
the
I
town who,
understand proportional
and it's
voting.
voting across the entire thing. It's not gonna be by town anymore for the at-large members.
Well, that's all fine, but I can only base it on the fact that we get one member on an 11-member board. So, and here again, I would like you to just hear what I say and take it in and, respect it.
I understand. You don't wanna change a thing.
No, I do,
No,
I'm
they
willing
have
to talk about
concerns.
changing things.
They have concerns.
But I also feel that many of the things we're talking about, and if we get to the point where we decide we don't move forward, I think this conversation is extremely valuable because I think many of these things that are included in all of this can be done right now. It could be done right now. In terms of curriculum coordination, Howie Iris has been talking about this for years.
We've been talking about it for years at the SU level, and
Yeah.
then when it actually gets down to the actual schools, like, well, we actually want to prioritize this, and we want to do that, and our schedule wants it to be this way, and right now, because there's not one single governance structure, each school can do whatever they please, and there's no way to make that actually happen. It could happen, just like you say with a language teacher, it could happen, except Newbrook wants to teach French, and Windham wants Spanish, and Townsend wants Chinese because all the kids want to go to Journey East. So nobody can decide on which language teacher to hire, and we can't just say, oh, look, we have all 3 of those languages, and we can point 2 of them out to the school. You know, that has to happen with willing cooperation, and we haven't been able to get that as long as I've been sitting on the WCSU board, where all those schools willingly cooperate with each other. And now we're gonna be willingly cooperating under state law. You know, it's a mandate, it's coming.
Yeah.
I'd like to control our own destiny and put together some articles that we could live with and work under, rather than the ones that are gonna come imposed.
And you know,
But
Joe,
we're
that's
running
why
out
I'm
of
sitting
time.
here. That's why I'm sitting here instead of spending the evening with my sister-in-law and her family. I'm dedicated to doing this and having this conversation.
Heidi Drew.
I just want to say, Carolyn, I certainly hear you, and I've heard what you've said the last couple meetings. I understand the concern about closing the Wyndham School. I completely get that, because I don't think anybody sitting around this table wants to see the school close in their town. I get that. When you say you want a unanimous vote on a budget, though, my question is, what are you afraid of losing? The budget won't necessarily close the school, because we can put a safeguard in for the voting, you know, Wyndham voting on closing that school, period, not allowing the rest of the people to have that option, at least for a period of time, I guess. But what are you worried about having a unanimous vote on a budget? What are you afraid is gonna be cut that everybody else around the table would agree to do, but Wyndham wouldn't?
Or just cut to Wyndham.
That's what I'm not
What I'm
following.
concerned about, and great, and thank you for asking the
Yes.
question, Heidi. What I'm concerned about is that somehow in the process, Wyndham, or it could be any of the other schools, but Wyndham gets shortchanged, and all of a sudden, the quality of education, the opportunity for education is diminished. That's what I fear.
So you feel like, you know, all the towns represented would decide that they should cut something at the Wyndham School only and not across the board on all schools? Or are you thinking we'd cut it a board, not we, but a board would cut something like language across the board, and Wyndham wouldn't want to lose that, but everybody else would? I guess I'm wondering, are we talking about equality, or are we talking about a target of Wyndham?
Well, having been the poster child for schools that a school that should be closed by
People around this board, this committee have never said that is what they want to see.
right.
I mean, I just want to say that nobody has ever said I understand that you feel targeted, but nobody around this committee has ever suggested that.
So a former commissioner and then secretary of education has
suggested
indeed
it.
said
Okay.
that in print.
But we're being proactive, we're not letting the state make any decisions about Wyndham. So my question is, you know, are you worried that Wyndham won't have what it wants? Or that the towns would gang up on Wyndham, I guess, is what my question is.
I'm concerned that the children of the town of Wyndham will not get the quality of education that they're getting now, which is
Okay.
excellent.
Okay, which they should continue to get, as well as all the rest of the kids
Yeah.
should continue to get. And I would hope a board that we create would want the excellence for all their schools.
Yeah, yeah.
I
agree with that.
Okay, and I agree with Joe in the sense that I've never seen a board unanimously vote on anything. And nothing will succeed if that was something that's written into the articles. But I would hope that anybody that joined a board for all of our schools would work together to continue the excellence of education. And so I just want to acknowledge, I hear what you're saying. I just need to understand specifics about what you're afraid Wyndham is going to lose.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, though.
Yes, thank you.
So at what point do we propose changing the articles to include choice amongst the elementary schools for
That's
students?
the next item on the agenda.
So
is-
can
are
we,
the articles.
can we actually deal with the articles before we come up with the opinions, or is this what you're looking for discussion?
You can do it whatever order you want.
We could move it
Last-
around and change the articles.
Last meeting, though, the committee said they wanted to do this before they looked at the articles, so that's, I mean, that was what the committee said they wanted to do.
So I'd like to see that change so that parents can pick which school they want to send their kids to.
Okay.
Do you want to look at the articles?
I was gonna say, do we need to look at the articles and then come back to this? I wasn't at the last meeting. I didn't know the committee,
We
you
didn't
know.
get through any of that stuff because there was a lot of discussion.
Right.
here and out.
So, yeah, I watched it on TV. So, does the committee agree with Drew that getting through the articles would help shape
Yes.
this discussion? All right, well, let's go to the articles then. So, where do we start, Drew?
Do you want me to, it might be easier if I take you through this.
Oh, please.
So, the first paragraph up there, and by the way, anything in gray means I've added something since I sent you, so otherwise it's the same. Anything that's not highlighted. So Article 1 is about the necessary and advisable. And from my working with you, my suggestion is that, well, the background, you need four districts to say yes. Brookline and Newfane want to make sure they go the same way, whether it's yes or no. So you can't get 4 with just one of them and one other would back out. You see what I mean? The numbers don't work.
Right.
So if you make Brookline and Newfane necessary, they have to vote yes. And then 2 of Jamaica, Townsend, and Wyndham. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so that's all Article 1 does. And let's see, if it's not all 5, then what happens is it becomes, instead of a unified union, it's a modified union. And that means whatever town is not in the union still has a seat at the board for matters 7 through 12. Because their kids they're still part of the Leland and Gray. Okay, so that's Article 1. Article 2 is some history, and it's probably going to go away. Article 2, I'm finding, I don't think is even necessary, so that will probably just go away. Some of that may migrate into the report, but Article 3, which grades are included, and that's no change from what you have now. Transportation, Article 4, is really no change from what you have now, the coordinate it through the supervisory union. And speak up and stop me, if there's questions or I've got something wrong.
Can we talk about the transportation a little bit?
Sure.
I have to say, hiring a bus driver, and I shudder to say this on tape, I happen to be one, but don't call me for sports trips, guys. That's one of the hardest things for us to hire, is a bus driver. And I would like, and transportation is not mandated by the state of Vermont. You do not have to provide transportation. But it would be extremely difficult for families in Wyndham, and other places I'm sure as well, to be able to run a school and especially provide transportation to the high school without transportation. So are we going to, in this, guarantee that we will be providing transportation to our students?
The way the article is written now, it does not guarantee it. It's really the decision of the new board. But any transportation that is to be goes through the Wyndham Central Supervisor Union. So if you want, as a committee, to put an article that says we're always going to provide transportation, and of course you have to be careful about the specifics of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not sure how you could spell out every possible combination.
Where you'll go and how close you'll live to every house.
But that would be a different article.
Well, that's part of the question. The school board in Wyndham, and I'm sure you other school boards, determine the bus route at the, usually the August meeting. And would this board continue to lay out the school bus routes for all of the different schools?
Together with the supervisory union.
Because
Okay.
we don't, the boards don't, do we?
We don't
No.
lay out the Leland and Gray
No,
bus
that's
routes.
between
That's,
the
the
Wyndham Central
administration
and
takes
bus
care of that.
Okay, they do.
Whatever,
And-
they
Wyndham
change
Central
it to
talks
make
to our Newbrook
sense.
principal.
I'm sorry to say that again.
Wyndham Central runs it through the principal to the board, but it's
Yeah.
never,
We don't.
Ours is always the
Never
same.
hear anything about it.
You as a board don't lay out the
No.
bus route?
No, they work it out with West River. It's the
Because it's a
supervisor,
West
they
River,
pay,
so
it's paid by
this,
West.
Yeah, okay, so we have our own bus driver.
Yeah.
We employ, it's the cheapest way for us to go is own our own bus and hire our own driver. We've looked into this. So, I guess, you know, there always has to be a certain common sense approach to school bus routes, and safety of the kids is the number one priority and goal. So, I just would like somehow there to be an acknowledgement that transportation will be provided, you know, however your language wants to be, to the best ability. You know, that doesn't mean that every student is gonna get service door to door.
Right.
Yeah?
Well,
that's
I
how it is
can't
now.
imagine
I
us
don't
not,
have any
not doing
transportation.
that. I
Yeah.
think there'd be a pile of kids who couldn't come to school.
So under this article, I'm assuming that the Wyndham operated bus would no longer exist because it would fall under the same supervisory union contract?
Not necessarily, it's how, it would be one the supervised union would maintain responsibility for providing transportation. And this board would, through the supervised union. Whether they chose to own a bus here and have a service there, or have all service, I mean, that would just be what works, what's gonna work.
What's less expensive?
Yeah.
Because you bring your kids down the hill, right? And aren't they
Correct.
picked up in West Townsend to
No,
go to
they go all
Leland?
the way to the high school.
They do.
Yeah.
So this looks like a decision that you'll need to make about whether you're gonna say, we're going to, or not. So if we could just do that, so we get through and find places where there are decision points for you
Yeah.
to make. Because one of the things I'll need to do is just make sure and check to see if you can write an article that says that for the board in any way makes sense or would
That'd be
be
great. So
accepted.
I don't mean to belabor this, I'm just
No,
putting it
that's
out there.
that's why
as
that's
part
why I
of
just
the
put that up there
mix.
to.
Plus, we could phrase something like, due to the geographical distances between all the schools,
Transportation will be provided.
transportation needs to be provided, or something like that, couldn't
Well,
it?
it is provided now with all the
is.
schools, right? I mean, and it's just, I mean, it's sort of, you would assume that it would continue to be provided by whatever governance structure was in place.
I would not assume that. There are towns that do not provide transportation for their kids.
In the WCSU?
No,
Oh, in the state.
but in the state.
Yeah.
Money gets tight.
My question is,
Oh,
how would the transportation come into play if we bring school choice into the picture?
We would have to deal with
That
that, I
board in the
mean,
WCSU has to figure it out.
we'd have, the new board would have to figure
We'd
it
have to
out.
figure that out.
And there may be some where, you know, school choice is in there, but just like if you opt for school choice now,
Right.
I mean, there is school choice at the high school level,
Yeah.
and there is no public transportation for school
Right.
choice.
A parent's
You can
choice.
you can send your kid wherever you can get them,
Yep.
and it may come to that with choice.
That's the way it is at the elementaries just over the border in Massachusetts too.
Is it?
They have school choice for the elementaries, but you have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay, Article 5. This just is what you have to do according to state law, just really honor existing agreements. What I don't know for sure is when your current Wyndham Central terminate, I just don't know where that is. And are all 5 towns, elementary schools using a part of that, or just 4?
No,
Just four.
4,
Wyndham
okay,
does
that's,
not.
just 4, and it goes through June 30th, 2017.
June 30,
We're currently negotiating
2017, great.
for the next contract. We don't even have a term yet.
Thanks.
We've had one meeting.
Article 6 is curriculum alignment, and that's really just the sort of Vermont law right now. So there's no, unless you want to say something different, and that's true for any of these. Transferring resources to the new entity. This is really, everything goes to the new entity, all the buildings, all the debt, all the assets.
Is it just assumed that all schools are putting in their fair share, all towns are adding up the table?
I'm actually gathering a lot of that information still.
That's really important that we
Because
get
I
that
Yeah.
think,
information.
yeah, for anybody to vote on this article, I would think they would want to really see what this means.
And back in the report, I've already started the place where the value of the buildings is included
That's
and
what I had written
and all
down,
that sort
was
of stuff.
value,
Yeah.
under transfer of real
Yeah.
property,
Yeah.
what's the value of each school?
And there's some question in the other group, interestingly enough, that some of the towns have a fair amount of resources stashed away. And so how are they gonna deal with that? Are they gonna spend a lot of that in the next year? So that, or is it gonna work out a kind of a per pupil contribution to a fund going forward? Or, you know, how are they gonna do that?
John, could I ask, I know that Dover does have such a fund, and as they would be, the side, you know, of this side by side, would their resources be spread over everybody or just the side, the
Just-
three towns?
Just the other member in that union, yeah.
Okay.
And real property, Article 8's the same way.
And can I ask, disposal
Please.
of assets are subject to Vermont statute, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
What is that?
You know,
Down at
Frank
the bottom of
Rucker,
Article 8.
Frank Rucker wanted to put that in there. So you'd have to go back and actually read that law.
Isn't
Okay.
that the one that says if you sell a school building out, it comes with the state money that's been given to it is now due?
It could be that.
And there was a waiver of that for under
I think that
153 or
changed,
6.
that may have
or-
changed this year, Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, we should check into
I'll
that,
I think
definitely.
voters would want to know what that means before they vote yes on this.
Well,
But
'cause
that's, I think,
Brookline-
what that was back when we were
It was
doing the
Brookline,
red.
wasn't
Was the-
Brookline was in that position.
thought so.
Yes, Brookline had that situation. We bought.
And you got the
school-
waiver and got out from
Yeah,
under
we
that
got
debt.
the waiver, we bought the school for $1.
Yes.
Yep.
And didn't have to
Oh,
pay
okay.
$200 and some thousand back to the state.
Well, I don't think it was that much, but it was,
Oh, it
it was
was.
a chunk of change.
No, it was 200 or 100 and something.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money.
It was close to two.
I thought it was
Okay,
close to
yeah,
two.
check that.
Yep.
Article
Check that.
9.
So Article 9, this is about making up, it needs to be proportional, the board makeup, using the 2010 federal census is the easiest way to do that, recalculate it every 10 years. But one of the things you might want to do is have a discussion about the size of the board.
And I'd like to see an at-large myself.
Yeah, can we use the Brattleboro language where we have the 9-member board based on population and then 3 at-large members who can be from anywhere?
Is that what you want to do?
I'd like to see at-large. I don't
I'd
care
like
about
at-large.
3 or how many ever, but I think an at-large person, at least one, gives an advantage to everybody at a certain time.
1 or 2. I mean,
Yeah.
this is 9.
2
If we go
is-
to 11, 11's not unmanageable. That's the current
No.
Leland and Gray.
Okay.
You might have a quorum every time.
Could you explain the at-large, how that would work, please?
They basically, I think, it's you run as an at-large member than rather than a town representative, and you would get votes from all the different towns, and then the highest vote getters would get would be the at-large members. So like, you would go in and you would vote, like as a Townsend member, you would vote for the 2 or 3 2 members of the town from Townsend, and then you would say, vote for 2 at-large people. And, the 2 highest at-large vote totals would be elected.
So for Townsend in particular, I don't know how the others work. We actually get elected on the floor sometimes, even nominated on the floor. This would require that all towns actually have a ballot and a petition ahead of time, so that
My guess is that this would have to be Australian ballot, similar
Right.
to the Leland and Gray budget now.
Yep.
We would have to have Australian ballot. Go ahead, Patty.
Governor Wentworth Regional District, where I grew up, we have at-large. And it's really actually quite a competitive thing to get on the school board. It's quite an honor, and we have lawyers, doctors, bankers, it's huge, and it takes up a whole section of the Granite State News, which is Wolfborough's newspaper. And sometimes the at-large person is from the little tiniest town of Brookfield, and they get the 2 votes. And it's happened incredibly a lot of times. And it's a really, it's quite a prestigious thing to get on the board at this regional school.
But it's here
district.
too.
Yeah, if you're not at town meeting for.
I was trying not to smile.
I tried
not to smile.
Yeah. It's a wonderful experience, and I feel good doing it, but it's when I don't want to do it anymore,
I don't know.
better show up.
I mean,
at
does
town
anybody have an
meeting.
issue with 11? I'm sorry,
Well, we're talking, oh, no, right, 11.
So
Nine
our-
plus two.
So now you're talking 11.
Would 2 at-large members be reasonable?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think more than 11.
Yeah, you start getting open slots, I think.
Yeah, you do. And we do on a Leland and Gray, and we only have 11, so.
Well, I wonder if I wonder if this might be a little more contested because of
I'd
the
hope so.
at-large. I would hope so. I hope people come out and actually, you know.
I run for it.
So what happens is, if you look at the representation on the board, and what happens is, like, Brookline has one, Wyndham has one. What happens if Wyndham's rep or Brookline's rep is ill? Therefore, the town isn't able to vote on the board. I mean,
That happens.
That happens now. As long as there's a quorum of the board
Yeah.
meets and
Yeah.
goes forward. You know, there are not majorly impacted, you know, there's not decisions that have major impact made at every board meeting. You know, you have an agenda ahead of time.
right.
You know if this is, you
I
know,
understand that.
that kind of thing. So, you know, I don't think, I wouldn't worry too much
Get a
about it.
substitute.
Well, you
We
know,
don't have a representative on Leland and Gray board from Brookline right now.
No,
Yeah.
we don't.
no.
No.
But it really hasn't been an issue, you know, for
No.
the Leland and Gray board for any long time. I mean,
Article 10 just staggers the terms out.
Makes sense.
So probably the 2 at-large, there'd be probably 1 2-year term and 1 3-year term. So there'd be either 3 or 4 new board members elected each year.
So how might this work? That you wouldn't want Brookline to have 3 every year, or only have a 3-year term. I'm just sort of understanding how. Is there sort of rotation that takes
After the
place?
first year, they're all 3-year terms.
Okay.
It's just the first year.
So you stagger them out.
Then they
so-
go.
Okay.
bless you.
So this is to initiate it then? not
That's
to-
right.
Not to maintain it?
That's right. So that it turns over
Mhm.
partially each year. The date would be at the town meeting coming up, March 7th, 2017, by Australian ballot. The new board, it just shows when they would start, which would be basically,
Can we go back to the daily
Sure.
vote and stuff? So normally we would vote for regular school board members as well, and this isn't gonna go into effect until 2019. Is there gonna be 2 votes for the current existing board and then
yes, so
the new?
any board that needs to be, any board members that need to be replaced,
Okay.
yeah.
I had a question about so how, can we go back to the board member terms?
Mhm.
So what percentage of the board does that mean for 9, 10, 11 people would change every year?
Either 3 or 4 members.
Okay, so that's not half, it's, no.
No, it's
Okay,
it's
good.
close,
Yeah.
as close to a third as possible.
Okay, okay.
Question on Article 11.
11, yeah.
Must this all be done by Australian ballot? We vote from the floor in Brookline.
Yeah, this first one would need to be done by Australian ballot. One of the things that the other group is looking at is that future votes, budget votes and elections be done from the floor, but in your case, it would be a 5-town meeting,
It would be like we used to do.
Okay.
like probably Leland and Gray.
Mhm.
So if you can imagine Leland and Gray having an open meeting and voting from the floor.
Yeah,
We
We
did,
did
and then we
We
got a
used to do
petition
that.
to take it to Australian ballot.
Nobody
That'd be
showed
great
up.
to go back.
Nobody showed up.
Nobody ever showed.
Didn't change the voting numbers.
Well, it did. When we met here, relatively few people showed up. With the Australian ballot, I think more people are participating, for better and for
I
worse.
think you have to have the Australian ballot to be at large
Right.
work.
Yeah, at large would.
Well, if you were all meeting together, so there wouldn't be separate town meetings.
Or we could do an Australian ballot all on the same day.
Mhm.
Okay. That's
Be a little bit hard to get together and everybody, you'd have to divide up into 5 groups to vote for which, the representative of the town you're in.
That's what we used to do.
We do that now for Newfane and Brookline.
Okay, well, it would be like that, but with 5 towns. Article 12, ready for that one? It just gives tells the new board when they're gonna start and gives them some things to work on. 13 is the budget.
So
And right
this
now
dic-
it's written to be Australian ballot.
Yeah, this dictates that on the 5th, on town meeting day, I guess, would be how it would move forward, or just for the first year? I think about how our budgets go and how there's generally discussion, and I think take Wyndham, for instance, if there is only one person there, they get to answer all the questions, and they may not know all the specifics about the budget, they may know the specifics about their portion of the budget, but it'd be difficult for town folk to actually hear about everything. I think Leland and Gray's current method makes more sense. That's my 2 cents.
So that's what would happen, more like what Leland and Gray does.
But it couldn't happen on town meeting day.
The vote could happen on town meeting day, but there would have to be meetings ahead of time that were like the budget
Information
information
meetings,
meetings,
yeah.
something where people could offer comment, feedback. Sort of the same process Leland and Gray goes through now.
Article 14, the existing boards would continue to take care of whatever remaining business there was. Article 15, the former 15 doesn't need to be there. So the new Article 15 is the school closing article. I put a couple of possibilities in there for you to look at. One is that the town where the school exists has to vote yes to close the school. In the case of Newbrook, it would be both Brookline and Newfane, combined vote. Or you could just have a different way from the board, say a majority or 2/3 majority or unanimous vote of the board.
Should we choose? Or do we have to decide now?
No, I don't think you ought to decide this very minute, but you will need to decide very soon, just in order the timeline to get things through about which way you go. You may want to see if you have a,
Can you do something where, like, for the first 5 years,
Yep.
it is one way, and after that, things are going along a little more, and you can like loosen the reins and give the board, the board would require unanimous vote. A unanimous vote of the board, which means your Wyndham representative has to vote for it, or your Brookline representative has to vote for it, as you one-member towns. After for 5 years, everything stays the same, takes a vote of town to close the schools. After that, don't tie the board's hands so tightly and let the board actually run the schools the way it sees fit. There would obviously be input from the towns, and there would be a town representative from every single town on there, but, don't,
But then some towns only have one vote.
Yeah.
and that one vote would stop it.
Oh, it would stop it.
Yeah, make it a unanimous vote of the board
I
after
didn't
5
hear
years to close the
unanimous.
school.
Oh, I didn't hear
Well,
unanimous.
it might. I really feel that one of the things I hear from Brookline, as the representative for Brookline, there are still people who are upset because they didn't really get to vote on it. And I feel like I just feel that the townspeople need to be the ones
Yeah.
that vote to do that.
I agree.
So could it be put in an article that after 5 years, the board has to have a unanimous vote to close it, but then it has to be brought to the townspeople? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's something like that, so that it's not?
It doesn't have to be a board unanimous vote to close it, to bring it to the town. It
Yeah.
just
Oh,
has
right,
to
or
be a
bring it
town
to,
vote
or just bring
close
it to
Yeah.
the town? I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, that's the way it is for the first 5 years, is that the town has to vote to close the school.
I think towns would wanna keep that as their little piece of control.
And if that's the local
What do you-
control that we need to get to pass this for whatever reason, this should not be the sticking point for a town voting it down.
Drew, what do you think?
Well, I'll argue the other side of the point. So let's just assume that Jamaica no longer has any students. But we want to keep our school open at the cost to Newfane and Brookline because we don't care how much it costs you guys. We don't want to close our school. And you guys can keep dumping that money in, and we need a new roof, and we need the parking lot, and we need a new boiler. But it doesn't matter to us because those costs are being shared. And the taxpayers in Jamaica are just not gonna vote in favor of it. Because we know that all of these capital improvements and all of this really high per pupil education is being shared across your guys.
We really do that.
That's just throwing the other side out there.
But doesn't the building have to be used for educational purposes? And if you don't have any students there, it's not being used for educational purposes.
So,
I don't
if,
see our
are we gonna
town
let the
doing that.
school board make the decision to pull the students out, but just not close the building? Because,
Therein
So we
lies
can
part of
take
the
all the
rub.
students out of a school, and then not close the building and just keep the physical, I don't think any prudent school board would make that decision. But I also don't think they'd arbitrarily close a school. I think it would be pretty evident that it was a good decision. But, yeah.
And the board would be making the decisions on whether to pay for those expenses or not. I mean, the board as an 11-member group would say, are we investing in a new roof when there's no students in the building? So they might not be paying. Now, that's the deterioration of the building that nobody can use
Yeah,
or
and
nobody's
Jamaica
using.
would be stuck with a building sitting in its town that's falling apart.
Yeah, it'd be functionally
because the
opposite
board-
us.
just saying, if you put this in, the town must vote in favor of it. That gives every town the ability to hold the other 5 communities hostage. Because if they don't vote to close it, you can't close it.
Well, it's just a
Um,
majority that's voting to close it, right? I mean, we're not talking about a unanimous vote of the town. We're
No, it
talking
would be
about
a simple
majority.
majority in the town to close the school. Yeah, it would be. But, Drew makes a good point. The board could say, look, it makes sense to consolidate this and to move this around and to put this together. And, certainly after 5 years of running everything, the board would have a fairly good idea of those proposals. And if the board, I think, was unanimous on it, it's, it doesn't tie their hands. But I don't want to spend all night arguing about this. I agree with Drew that it does allow towns, it does allow that hostage holding, like, we're never going to vote to close our school.
So could we put in there that, in that article, to protect the towns that have one member, that there must be representative on the board of each town during that vote? Do you know what I mean?
That's
So
what
that-
Well, that's what unanimous would mean.
Right,
Every
but
single
I'm saying
member
if
has to vote
Wyndham,
yes.
but if Wyndham was sick that day,
Yeah.
Right, we would.
so they
Yeah,
weren't
so-
represented.
Oh, I see what
No.
you're saying.
Because if it's just a quorum, you don't have it covered necessarily.
You can't hold the vote.
I would say we could write the article so that it has to be absolutely unanimous.
Yeah.
All board
All
members
members.
must be in
Yeah.
attendance and all board members
Yeah.
must vote that way.
Or the vote doesn't happen. if it's not.
But I like the idea of the 5 years, because then we've given a chance to see how it's working, and then we have an idea of where the money's going, where it's not going, where it needs to go, and where things need to change. I think that it should
But after
be.
5 years, you still have it has to be a unanimous vote of
Yeah.
the board.
Right,
Yeah.
but I think it should be the board, I think it should not be the.
Well, maybe 5 years isn't long enough. I mean, 5 years isn't a magic number. I think it could be 10 years if we're concerned a lot happens in 10 years.
Right.
10 years is a long time.
I know.
I won't be here.
Go ahead, Carol.
Don't be so
So I want to clarify, because it actually, I think, is in statute that no school can be closed for the first 5 years.
Is that still?
It's either 4 or 5. John can correct me if I'm wrong.
I'll have to check it.
But now I've lost my train of thought. Never mind. Oh, yes, I've got it back. My understanding, according to Steve and John, was that in order to, once this new board is formed, they can do whatever they want. They can disregard these articles of agreement. And so there needs to be an additional article on the warning, and I just want to clarify this, that I don't know how it gets voted, but maybe John, you could clarify this, that this article can't be eliminated by this new board.
Anything that the towns vote on that's in the articles has to get done. And the problem last time with the red and the new school, and that we couldn't guarantee that would happen, was because that we couldn't write the construction of the new school into the articles. Now, we talked to the State Board of Education, and had we had an additional vote of the towns to create that new school, then it couldn't have been circumvented without a vote of the towns. But this article that's in there that says no school closes for 5 years, and after that, it takes whatever, or however we write it, can't be circumvented by the board without a vote of the bodies that put it into place.
That's my understanding too, but I will double check it for you.
Okay. But I do feel strongly that a town needs to vote to close its school,
It wouldn't have a school anymore.
regardless
There
of
would
what
be
Drew says.
But once we go through this, the town doesn't have a school. The district has a school.
Yeah. Whatever. The town has a school, because it's sitting in the town.
Okay, so I'll work on those, answer some questions, and bring back possibilities.
Okay.
Did we just, because we talked about a lot of things, just review what we said we're going to check into? Is it going to be the 5 years and then the unanimous?
What I'm gonna bring back for you to look at, because you haven't made any decisions,
Great.
is an article that says for the first 5 years, basically towns have to vote. After that time, it would be a unanimous vote of all the members of the board. And let you chew on that a bit and see what you think about it. Article 16.
There's your choice article.
Yep.
I don't like this one.
So the way it starts is that initial enrollment is in the towns as they are now. And then this is sort of the least, I don't want to say intrusive, but least directive of the choice piece. So that the new board develops a policy to guide the administration in cases where circumstances indicate the benefit for a student attending an elementary school other than the one assigned in Article 17. That's not a complete sentence, but I'll make it a complete sentence. The idea is that it just develops a policy for it. So if you want something stronger than that, that's what you need to let me know.
So now, right now, the middle and the high school has school choice, like to go to the career center and stuff like that. Does
So we
that
can't-
need to be in there?
It's a different, it's
That's
a
a different
whole different
thing.
meaning of the word school choice.
Okay.
So the elementary school choice means choosing which elementary
Right.
school within the
Within the
system
district.
you want to attend.
Yeah.
High school choice is a whole set of rules of where you can apply to take a slot at another high school if there's one
Okay,
open.
and that override, that's
That's just
still-
state law.
Still safe,
Yeah.
because it's state law.
But we're not, we're giving, I'm sorry, we're giving somebody the authorization to decide how school choice happens. We're not dictating that it's lottery or some,
That's what this says, exactly right.
Your hand up?
I think it needs to be a little more.
So are we saying that you go to the school in your town unless you approach someone and say, this isn't gonna work for my kid, I want to go to this school, and you have to go through that process, or is it going to be?
It doesn't even say that.
Okay.
It just says the new board is gonna set up a policy to guide school choice.
Okay.
I can show you what the other group's looking at if you'd like. It's a little more directive.
Go ahead.
So, this is one of the things that I think could be a real benefit in terms of moving forward. And, you know, for instance, in the Wyndham area, we have West Wyndham, which is actually in Jamaica. And in order to go to, you know, we've had actually West Wyndham kids come to Jamaica in the past, but not for maybe 25 years. Because of all this scrambling for kids, you know, in order to survive, generally Jamaica doesn't want to tuition them to Wyndham, and they also don't provide transportation. We do have some kids in West Wyndham, they're currently being homeschooled, but it would make sense to me that, you know, if they wanted to attend school, that they come to Wyndham, instead of having to come all the way through Wyndham and then down to the bottom of the hill. I also have heard that kids on Wyndham Hill may have wanted to come to Wyndham. So is there some way we could introduce some kind of language that would allow for school choice?
This is
I
some
can't see
language
this.
that the other group's looking at.
Want to read it out loud?
Families of
Yeah.
students in grades K through 6 will be able to choose the school they will attend, subject to the availability of space in the school and grade. Priority will be given to children attending the school during the prior year. No student residing in the town of the school will be denied access to the school in that town. So that's some language they're looking at.
So if the class is full because of the residents, they may not have an opportunity.
That's
to
right.
That's right.
That's right.
Do you want to put in
Oh,
there
we would
also
have that
that
problem.
siblings might have priority? If there's a
They're
move,
split families.
right, instead of having them in two different schools, that would be one or the other.
Yep, I like that too.
It's a
Yeah.
very good idea.
So do you want me to slip this in for consideration?
Yeah,
Yep,
I like
I
that.
like that.
it. And ours would have to be pre-K through 6?
Yeah.
Pre-K through
Pre-K,
seven.
pre-K is really gonna be done by the whole system.
How is pre-K gonna be done?
Pre-K would be, there'll be partnerships, there'll be programs.
But it's done different right now across our,
Say that again?
it's done different within these towns. It's gonna have to be
Exactly.
done the same.
No, it doesn't have to be the same. It has to be a unified system of making sure kids have a chance to have pre-K.
For instance, a Jamaica student can choose to come to Townsend for pre-K because the town's paying that 10 hours of money wherever they go. So they have.
It's not even the town now anymore.
Well, right,
so,
but,
Yeah.
Or they can go to a certified daycare.
so, you know, if you wanted your child to come to Townsend, you've got 10 hours, you can send them to Townsend right now as a 4-year-old, because we have a 4-year-old in our program. A 4-year-old program in our school, that's what I was trying to say.
What, can I send them outside of the district?
You can, yep, because
But then
we
you have
have,
to pay the rest, though.
we're
They have
paying
to-
for kids that are in
But
other
they have to
places.
tuition the rest of it, the parents.
if they go for more than 10 hours, the
Right.
parents have to pay no matter where,
Right.
yes.
Sometimes.
So can my kids
Except
go
you're
to
in school, yeah, sorry.
It's- but it's different everywhere.
Well, so that's a good point, though, because that actually leads to another good point, because if you're pre-K in Townsend, you get full day, all day, full week
Same with Jamaica.
services, but if Jamaica comes to Townsend, you'd only get 10 hours. So
Right.
if you included pre-K in this, a Jamaica student could come to Townsend full-time. It would be
Vice
over
versa.
their 10 hours without having to pay.
Or
That's
I
my
wasn't,
point.
I wasn't thinking about it all the way
That's my
through.
point. We have
Thank
to
you.
work it out.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's why I'm recommending that you not talk
Don't do
about it
that.
that way. Because it'll be a program that'll be across the supervisory union, across all 5 towns. And it might be different in different places, but it doesn't, but just because you live in a particular town doesn't mean you necessarily have access to one or the other.
But we could choose to.
Yeah, but you see, I mean, we can do that. I just think you're setting the board up for a lot of difficulty. Some parents want full-time care, And so you might have a program in one place that provides full-time care. Some parents may want, the 10 hours. And you may have another program in a daycare, a provider, private provider that does that. But it's going to function very different than K-6 education. Because parents really need to serve parents, you really need a lot of different varieties.
Good, Drew.
So Jamaica currently has full-day pre-K. Wyndham has 10 hours. This goes through, does that entitle the Wyndham students to full-time?
Does Jamaica?
Whatever the board decides they're going to do for
Or does
pre-K.
Jamaica lose our full day and we only get 10 hours?
You might.
We'll decide.
Is Jamaica?
I don't like that
board
answer.
pay?
I don't like the answer the
Yep.
board will decide. I want to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Jamaica's pre-K is for 4-year-olds, ours is for 3 and 4-year-olds.
Well,
And we have one
wait, wait.
facility,
not in your school though.
no, at a private daycare. And we have one that provides 12 hours of care and one that provides 10, and the 12 is paid for.
That was your question too?
No, mine is completely off the subject, but on the same subject.
Well, your hand was up next, so.
But- Because we're talking about all these different exceptions of being able to have our kid go into a different school and whatnot. My question was, sorry to go off of the pre-K, but if we're gonna put sibling in to be able to go to a school with first priority, what about kids who have IEPs? If one school provides a better education program for special needs than another school, would they be able to have priority to get into a school over someone who doesn't? That makes sense?
I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Yep.
I think you run into discrimination law there. The IEP team might decide that needs to happen.
Right.
But just because the child's been identified as a handicapped student, I don't think should give that parent, that family, any more right to priority than any other kid.
And then, yeah, okay.
Just the family
Yeah.
itself.
And they all should be good programs if they're all under the same supervisory unit.
They should be, but sometimes some schools don't offer as much as other schools. My
But then the
son,
IEP team could then do it, and that would be one thing,
And-
one of those,
Benefits.
yeah.
for the betterment of the student.
My son has an IEP and Newbrook has been phenomenal with it. But if he was in a different school where they didn't have that kind of system set up,
I think you'd have a good argument with your IEP team.
with, to
And
then,
that's gonna
to
have
then
some.
fight that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to pre-K a little.
Sorry.
So that we can, no, not just because we can, this language that goes in there makes sense. And gives a lot more mobility to students across the newly created district, which seems to be desirable. But pre-K is a totally different program than K-6 education because of the varying, we need to come up with pre-K language.
Or exclude pre-K from the whole thing.
Well, that's what the grades K-6 does. They can choose. Pre-K is just pre-K. I
What
mean,
it
right
is.
now you can go to pre-K anywhere you want.
Right, but what it means is, for the town, the discussion is going to be, what happens to our pre-K program? And right now, we don't have an answer, so we can't engage that conversation. What happens to that full-day pre-K program that Jamaica has? Is it going to exist after this?
Well, Jamaica has a full-day pre-K program. Townsend has a full-day pre-K program. Newbrook?
Newbrook contracts theirs out.
Newbrook contracts theirs out, and Wyndham
Contracts theirs out.
contracts theirs out.
And so those students are only allowed 10 hours.
hours.
Got it.
Whereas if
12.
or 12. But if they were allowed and a family wanted, they could have full week, all day long in Jamaica or Townsend. And it would be, under what I was looking at, if it followed under that, it would be not any more money out of the pocket of that family.
That's
Whereas-
all, right, to drive a
But
40-year-old.
can the family would still have the choice to
Choice.
do the 10 hours
Absolutely.
at a private
It would still be a
place?
choice, but then it would now become, well, this family doesn't have to put out money. They just have to take them to Townsend or Jamaica to have
Full day.
care of a full day,
Unless they're 3 years old.
which may change
Yeah.
in the near future.
Right.
So I don't think you wanna close that door yet.
Not yet.
You stay away out of this mess.
No, not yet. I think, for one thing, I need to talk to the superintendent a little bit about this,
Yeah.
get some guidance.
I think you might have some thoughts on it.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is this has only changed in the last year or two with this 3 and 4-year-old thing, so this is an evolving issue, and I don't think we should necessarily keep it out, or, I don't know if by not addressing it, we're doing a good thing, or by addressing it, we're doing a good thing. But you'd want families, I mean, if we're talking about equalized opportunities, you would want a kid in Newfane or Brookline to be able to go full day if that's how you feel. A full day for all week long. I mean, some families don't want that. But if we're talking about coming into a kindergarten program on an even basis, then you should have that opportunity. If you choose, yeah.
So let me get some guidance from the superintendent and
All right.
see where we go.
Can I
Article,
ask a very quick question? How do you guys provide transportation for those children?
4-year-olds are allowed on the bus.
Okay.
We have been discussing 3-year-olds, and I'm not sure they're allowed on a bus. But that's something someone's looking into.
They have to
Okay.
be in a
Car seat, yeah, see, so that's what I was wondering. But right now, 4-year-olds ride our bus.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Article 18, it basically says we're going to engage people similar to the way Leland and Gray does it. And those are all the articles. Now, if there's another thing that you want to address, that would be just Article 19.
Any Articles 19?
No, if you have something else. You want-
Right, is there anything else that needs to be
Oh,
addressed in the
oh,
articles?
That wasn't me.
Not yet.
Still early.
It's still early.
Yeah.
Have you
It's
looked
early
at
in the
have you
discussion.
looked at the timeline, Drew?
No, it's not.
So
not
does
tonight,
that,
there is.
does that help you with student opportunities now?
We're getting closer.
What do we need to get you to the point where?
I think we got to have a meaningful conversation about important issues. I don't think we have the answers yet.
No.
But we've at least started a discussion about kids. We've had a lot of discussions about money, which is not really what this is about. So we're talking about how are we getting pre-K for our kids? Can we get our kids into the right schools? We're starting to have what, in my opinion, is the most important conversation of this discussion, which is our kids. We still have answers that we need back. So
Maybe if we could get the list of the questions, that would be helpful.
You mean the ones we just came up with?
Yeah.
I saw, well, I've got the ones we've talked about, but I mean, if there are other ones,
Yeah, are there other, I mean, we've given John 5 or 6 things to look at in these articles and confirm this and follow up on that and find that and change these drafts. So we should have draft version 3 for the next meeting. But is draft version 3 gonna be enough to actually start putting these student opportunities down? Because in order to stick with the timeline, at the end of the next meeting, we have to have a draft of articles ready to go to the Agency of Education for their comment. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the final version by any stretch, or that it's going to the voters at that point, but we have to get it to them so that they can get their comments back.
Is it possible to talk to or to find board members or somebody that have done this just as governance that could come and speak with us about what the benefits have been for children in other parts of the state? Because that, they've done it, if
sure.
they've done
And I will
it.
tell you, your Leland and Gray principal spoke to it to some degree. I've done it in 2 different systems, and so most of my thinking is incorporated in the memo I sent you about opportunities.
Things you witnessed.
Yeah, that I witnessed, and you know, in South Burlington and in Montpelier. So, I mean, we can certainly ask somebody.
We might even be able to ask Bob to come back and instead of speaking about Leland and Gray, which is what he primarily spoke on, talk about, you know, what he saw as the pluses and minuses of a single district. I mean, he's local, he's available probably. He lived it for 7 years in Springfield. You know, he ought to have a pretty good idea. That's true.
I will remind you that during his presentation, he repeatedly pointed out the opportunities that were available to Leland and Gray students that were not available in his previous place of consolidated education. And he pointed that out, I bet no less than a dozen times during that presentation.
I remember that.
I don't think that speaks to.
But we're not sure where Springfield started, what their starting point was.
But there are also a lot of pieces in the memo I wrote you that I did get from not only Bob, but your other principals too. So,
Okay, so we've gotten through the articles. Student opportunities, I think we can come back to next time and finish. Connections with the citizens we've done. Alternatives if voters don't approve the unified district. Do we really want to start that after 9? I would say financial analysis ought to wait till Ken's here, because without Ken, financial analysis is meaningless.
Comment on that?
Yeah?
I have one question. I think
Sure.
I sent an email about that. The analysis that you did spoke about the school as a whole, and I'm
Right.
wondering how special education costs and how they might be different from one school to the next might impact our analysis of how one school is maybe more expensive or less expensive than another school. Is there a way for you to break that out somehow when you look at your analysis?
can you talk a little more about it? Because
Yeah.
special education expenses are often because of particular students.
Yeah. I'm not looking at the budget in particular. Usually the budget has line items for special education
Yeah.
costs. Is there a way to, extract that from the total cost and sort of get a per pupil cost?
Oh, sure.
Subtracting out across the board special
Yeah.
education. But I think you're going with the fact that if you look at the equalized per pupil investment on page 8 of the workshop, the paperwork that you sent us, you'd see Townsend in the middle of everybody, and then there's a huge spike.
That's right.
And last meeting, we had a huge discussion about how Townsend is one of the most expensive schools in the district. But I think, Brud, you're going to the fact that it's because of special ed costs. That happened when all of a sudden several kids moved in, and those students made our costs go up. If we had a district, and I think there was a discussion on a board level about removing, right?
A few years, well, it was last year.
Okay.
Marlboro brought a proposal to the WCSU about pooling special education costs. We tabled it because we're going through this process. If we go to, if we follow this to the end and we become one union, one district, we are in a sense pooling our special education costs.
Yes.
And I think that part of this is if we extract that, that's gonna tell us
It's
how
a
the
real
rest of our
balance.
schools are doing, how the school is doing on the rest of the playing
Sure,
field, not on
I
that
can
one.
certainly do that.
That's a good request.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be part of the financial analysis for next time. So that leaves us with planning the agenda for next time, so we'll have the financial analysis with those new numbers. We probably will have we'll have the final PR documents that Patty will have approved and released. We may have some things to look at. We don't need to submit this to the AOE before the next meeting, do we, or do we?
I may give them a peek at it.
Okay.
Although, what I may do is just give them the other one, because that's the same author and I'm writing things very similarly.
Okay.
So that may suffice.
Okay, so we won't have any AOE comments to deal with, and we can probably talk a little bit more about some of the community engagement pieces as we go forward with the articles, sort of the meetings and the going out, the outreach that needs to be done.
So we'll do that next meeting, Jen, is that-
Yes.
Okay, thank
And
you.
then we'll finish, and then hopefully with draft 3 of the articles, we can finish up the student opportunities piece, or at least start talking about, you know, the things that choice will do for the students and the thing, and the, you know, the things that we can say make some sense for the students. Anything else need to be on the agenda?
I would just encourage you, when you look at the articles, they're embedded in the full report. And please, if there are things in that full report that you want to, you know, to bring up and look at and change, bring that up. I don't think it makes sense to go through it line by line here, but if there are parts that the committee ought to discuss, I think that would be important.
Parts of
the full report, because the articles are one section of a long report.
Oh, right.
And also, I mean, I've been trying to put into the report the things that you've talked about and the materials you've received, but you need to be okay with the report too.
Okay.
How long is the report?
That's the
I
19.
think the whole thing's like 20, 19, 20 pages.
It's 19 right now, but then there'll be schedules.
And so everybody, as I recall, was cool. Somebody will have the brochure the next time, so I'll be prepared to give some out to people.
You're gonna send that out?
To their,
Send it out
yeah, I'm gonna
tomorrow.
send out, but next time, I assume the finished brochure will be, we'll
If you
have
send it out in the next day or so,
Yeah.
put a week timeline on
Yeah.
it.
For
Then you
everybody
and
to
Anita
get
can
back
work out what it
and
actually
change it.
looks like, and then we can we'll get the numbers back. The people who volunteered to go to their towns and get the high number of voters that could show up. We'll take that, we'll go up a little bit, and then we'll go just get them printed at Staples or whatever, for the $500 it's gonna cost us, and then we can distribute them. Anything else?
And I would like to talk next time, maybe a little bit, or maybe not next time, but at some point about dealing with select boards and going to select boards, because that was considered a big.
But I think that should happen like immediately.
I'm not sure, I mean, this is really a school board decision, and we're a separate statutory committee, and I know, for instance, the select board does not have the interests of I mean, nothing against the select board, they're running the town.
No, I know.
They're not centered on the students
Bucky seemed
like
like
we
a-
are.
Yeah, our select
Maybe
board-
not in, maybe in
Our
your
select
town.
board is quite interested,
Yeah. I would say
and,
that's
you know,
across the
I
board.
would be going to the next select board meeting on November 2nd, except I'm going to be here, so.
I think we need to have buy-in from the select board
We
in
need
each
to,
town.
I need to get something to a vice chair of the select board so that she can present, and I gotta talk to our Guy Tanza, our town clerk, so that they're up to speed on this.
We could
This is
certainly
what they
inform
want.
them, but, I mean, it's not like they're gonna, change anything that's.
No, but they wanna
It's
be, they need to be aware.
Informing.
It's awareness.
Sure, Carolyn.
So I think that we could potentially have conversations with select board members and not necessarily formally attend a select board meeting. I know in Wyndham, the wind issue is huge, and everybody's focused on that, and nobody is going to be paying attention to this, so, except maybe the dikes. I just think that you can call up your select board members, and at least I can easily, and just have conversations about where we're
Okay,
going.
well, whatever anybody feels is appropriate
Yeah,
for
we're-
their particular
I'm gonna talk
town.
to our town
Pam's
clerk,
at the
and I'm
meeting,
going to
so
talk to
she's
somebody
just-
on the select board and let them bring up what we're doing. And that there will be brochures available on election day and blah, blah, blah. And you'll need to make sure that people, the voters, take a brochure so that they can read about it.
And you could probably, there are posters that Anita's got now,
Yeah.
press release, you could almost make up a little PR
Send them to
packet
the blog spot.
from the stuff that I'm sending you. Or what else, don't send out the stuff I'm sending you because it's drafts, but.
Anything else from you? Nope. Anyone?
Got my marching orders.
Do it.
Move to adjourn. Yay.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's a unanimous second.
So what did you have for the agenda?